On a cold, dark evening in late December, Emily had just finished another long day at the office. The glow of her computer screen had been the only light she'd seen for hours, and the thought of going home to her warm, cozy apartment was the only thing keeping her going. It was well past sunset when she finally shut down her computer and gathered her things. The roads were slick from the light snow that had begun to fall earlier in the day, and she couldn't help but feel a bit of unease as she bundled up and walked to her car. The drive home from her job was usually a quiet, mundane routine, but tonight felt different. The storm had intensified, the roads now coated with a thin layer of ice, and visibility was poor. Emily tightened her grip on the steering wheel, trying to focus, but her mind kept wandering, thinking about the meetings, the deadlines, the things she still needed to do. Exhaustion clouded her thoughts, and a deep fatigue settled over her. She switched on the radio to distract herself, but the static-filled news report only made her more uneasy. The storm had turned worse in some areas, with reports of cars slipping off the road. She glanced nervously at the rearview mirror, and then back to the road ahead, which was becoming harder to see with each passing minute. The tires of her car began to slide slightly on the icy patches, but Emily quickly corrected herself, gripping the wheel tighter. Her eyes flicked to the clock on the dashboard. 7:15 p.m. She was nearly home. Just a few more miles. But then, as she navigated a slight curve on the road, her tires lost traction entirely. Her car spun out of control, the back end fishtailing violently. Emily's heart pounded in her chest, and she instinctively jerked the wheel, trying to regain control. But the car didn't respond. It skidded toward the edge of the road, and in the blink of an eye, the ground below gave way as the vehicle careened off the shoulder, tumbling down a steep embankment. There was a sickening crunch as her car collided with a tree, and the world around her spun wildly, the darkness and snow engulfing her senses. Her body slammed against the seatbelt, her head struck the side window, and everything went silent. When Emily finally came to, she was disoriented, her breath shallow and labored. Her ears rang. The cold was unbearable. She tried to move but couldn't. Pain surged through her body, and her fingers grasped the dashboard, desperately searching for any way to free herself. Her legs felt heavy, and she realized with a wave of panic that she couldn't feel them. She tried calling for help, but her voice was weak and barely audible. The snow continued to fall, thick and steady. Emily's breath formed foggy clouds in the air, but she couldn't tell if anyone was near. She fumbled for her phone, but it had fallen out of reach. She could only hope that someone would come across her car, that someone would find her soon. But as time passed, the silence grew deeper, the hours stretched on, and the cold began to creep into her very bones. Emily's thoughts became blurry, and the harsh sting of reality faded, replaced by an overwhelming sense of stillness. The world outside seemed to disappear, consumed by the unrelenting storm. By the time the first responders found her car the next morning, the road was completely buried in snow. Emily's lifeless body was slumped in the driver's seat, the storm having claimed yet another victim in its cold embrace. They found her phone on the floor, shattered and useless, and the memory of her final moments would remain locked in that remote stretch of road, forever a haunting reminder of how quickly a life could be lost. The tragedy of Emily's death rippled through her small circle of friends and family. The police investigation revealed how quickly she had been taken from the world. The icy conditions and the lack of other vehicles on that stretch of road making her crash a grim accident with no one to help. The driver who she had waved goodbye to at the office that evening would never come back. The road she took every day, now marked with a small memorial, became a place of sorrow. It would always be remembered as the stretch where one woman alone in her car on a dark, icy evening was taken too soon.